Hello and welcome to the rMetroidvania podcast. My name is Professor Q.
And this is Cauldrath on the rMetroidvania subreddit and Discord.
Hi, I'm Master. I'm also from there.
And today, I think you should probably give us an introduction, Cauldrath.
Alright, so I am kind of in the planning stages for a video talking about the definition of a Metroidvania. I'm not really trying to say what the actual definition is, but just like go over like different things that I've seen people include in their definitions, praying the pros and cons of different things. Just going over everything related to the definition of a Metroidvania, well, just like letting you make your own conclusion at the end.
And this is a subject that never comes up on either the Discord or the the Reddit. Is that correct?
Right.
I barely heard you there. You got a little muffled for a second there.
Yeah.
And by the way, the game that's in the background right now is Memphis Belmont says correct. The game in the background is Mummy Demastered.
Yeah, everyone agrees on what Metroidvania has been around for so long that everyone just agrees on what it means by now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because why wouldn't they?
How long has the term been around? Since like 2000?
I believe it was basically Symphony of the Night when it came out.
Was that part of your research, is figuring out when it first got coined, or is that not really the scope of the video? It's more about what people want to define it as today.
Do plan on mentioning that, but I wasn't really giving the exact date when it was coined. Just mention Jeremy Parrish and how it was related to Symphony of the Night. Yeah, I get that is in the outline though. So if we want to, just go through it.
Memphis Belmont says, I mean, if you said Metroidvania to someone who had never seen or heard of a video game, they would know exactly what you're talking about. Is there any genre name, even first-person shooter? If you've never heard or seen a video game, would that really call to mind exactly what a first-person shooter entails, or the details of it?
Well, first-person shooter has the advantage of it kind of being self-describing.
That's true.
If you know what first person means and you know what shooting means, then you can kind of figure out what a first person shooter is.
That's probably a bad example. I think a better example would be adventure game.
Well, adventure game is the absolute worst example of a genre because it means literally nothing.
It beats literally nothing. I think that's worse than Metroidvania because technically you could argue that every game is an adventure.
You could also argue that every single game is a role-playing game.
That's also true. Yeah, a role-playing game.
What about a puzzle game?
Puzzle games, yeah, exactly. Or an activities game, as we like to call them.
Yeah, there's no games that are in the activities genre that, there should be.
So, everybody talks about how awful it is that Metroidvania is so hard to describe, but when you really think about it, you technically have that problem with everything, except that for some reason, we seem to all accept what an RPG is, even though that should be one of the hardest things to define.
It's because everyone assumes people who argue not popular opinions about the term RPG are just doing it to troll.
But there is some disagreement. Is Call of Duty an RPG or
I think that's mostly for pedantic people trying to argue.
Right. When was the last time you saw someone argue that and you took them seriously and thought they were being serious?
Now, one example of a game that is often brought up as an RPG that I don't really think of as one is The Legend of Zelda. People always Legend of Zelda, great RPG.
Yeah, it seems like some people are just this is in the fantasy genre, therefore RPG.
Yeah, I mean, there is an argument that you could say that Legend of Zelda is technically an RPG in the sense that there are towns and you talk to people and you equip things.
Thank you for not saying that you're playing the role of Link.
No, I did not say that. Which is funny because that's technically what role-playing should mean, but that isn't what it means. Yeah, so mired in history.
Yeah, so role-playing game does come from Dungeons and Dragons, and so you could almost say that role-playing game means Dungeons and Dragons-like, and that's how people kind of treat it. So,
Just similar
like,
mechanics at least.
But here's the thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that technically it's almost like improv depending on who your GM is.
right.
You know, actual role playing. But that never happens in a video game because the video game does not have the scope or ability to cover all of the different things a tabletop could.
As you play your own character, you're making improvised decisions based on the things that you encounter.
I mean, theoretically, a good RPG should always have dialogue options rather than you just taking on taking on the role of a character. Like in a JRPG, you don't really have a choice about the decisions that the characters make. You just kind of see it through their eyes.
Yeah, like in this game, the Mummy Demastered, is he improvising when he sees different enemies, and like deciding how he wants to tackle these encounters?
How does this nameless soldier feel? What is his thought process as he's?
What's my motivation?
What is his motivation?
There are some games where you effectively have a player being a dungeon master and setting up encounters for others. So I mean, you could call those RPGs.
Those are true RPGs. Yeah, I think Divinity Original Sin has a setup for that. Those are actually a pretty good idea. I like those. The real-time creation stuff.
I think Baldur's Gate had something like that too.
I think that every major CRPG seems to have like this goal of making a some kind of modular thing that you can use. And I think it's just because the programmers or the people making the game are also fans of tabletop and like the idea of being able to do that with their engine. So anyway, we've gone on a nice tangent away from the subject we're supposed to be talking about.
Are we supposed to be talking about anything in particular?
I guess that's
what
true.
are we even talking about?
Well, the definition of Metroidvania. I think the point I was trying to make is that it's not the only genre that's difficult to define.
Yeah, that's
genre...
something. The thing about genres is like the point of them is to try to like find like group similar games so that people can find games that they like because they're similar to other games that they like. But then people will like a certain game for a different reason.
With any form of media, people will get pedantic about genre definitions. It's just the nature of having genre.
Yeah. Yeah, and anytime you're trying to find something, then you can always find the one exception that doesn't actually fall into what they meant by the definition in the first place. And yeah, the pedantic people just like to... It's like that... I linked that when we were talking about the genre definition. The cube rule, have you seen that?
Yeah.
Is a hot dog a sandwich? You know, does it really actually matter whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich? Like, what are you accomplishing by establishing this? But it's funny that people argue about it for hours on the internet.
What if you ask someone for a sandwich and then they bring you something that you wouldn't call a sandwich? Wouldn't you be disappointed?
So why are you asking for a sandwich? Generally, the reason you would be asking for a sandwich is you're looking for something that's portable and you can eat it like in your hand.
Right.
Right, it depends on what you expect from a sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a hot dog would meet that qualification.
So I actually think a sandwich is a very good analogy to Metroidvania because a sandwich can be a lot of things. Even excluding hot dogs. We'll say hot dogs are Zelda-likes, okay? Excluding hot dogs. You can put anything inside a sandwich and it would still be a sandwich. But not everybody's going to like every kind of sandwich just wholesale because it's a sandwich. You know, you have cucumber sandwiches that have no meat on them at all, or you have sloppy joes, which are a type of sandwich. Or is a hamburger a type of sandwich? I would argue yes. But like if you look at
hot dog between two slices of bread and then have a hot dog sandwich.
yeah, hot dog sandwich. Yeah, you could call it a hot dog sandwich. Slice it up, put some beans in there or something. Like you can do anything with a sandwich, but it's like a format for food. And that's kind of what Metroidvanias are like. Just taking Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night, you're going to have a division of people who like one or the other. The fact that both are technically Metroidvanias isn't going to determine that you're going to like one or the other. And by the way, there might be long pauses because this is just recording of when I was playing the game like normal, and I may have gotten up to get my kids or something. So I apologize if there's moments where the gameplay just stops for a minute.
People aren't here for the gameplay, they're here for the riveting and impassioned discussion.
That's true. But anyway, what do you think of my assessment of Metroidvania?
I agree. Metroidvanias are sandwiches.
There we go.
Well, there are aspects of Metroidvania that like somebody might specifically be looking for. Like it is an exploration focused genre. And if you're looking for exploration, then that's one of the best genres to pick.
I think it's a lot easier for people who like both Symphony of the Night and Super Metroid because then it's more easy for them to see what is common between the two that makes them like the genre and not just, specifically Castlevania.
Yeah. Like, you'll get the people who specifically like Castlevania, and they're like, Metroidvanias have to have RPG elements, otherwise they're Metroid-likes.
Yes.
So ultimately, I was saying before, genres are there to describe games that are similar to other games that you like, so you can find games that are share those qualities that you like, so you can find more of them. But the problem comes when people disagree on what qualities they like in a given game.
Right. Yeah, they'll call combat pickles. If people don't like pickles on their sandwiches, they're not going to like Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
But we can stop making the food analogies because I know that they're not always perfect.
I mean,
I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know what would be better than them.
Sure. I have a friend who gets really mad when I use food analogies too much.
Maybe they just hate food. Or maybe they like food too much and you're making them hungry.
So there's the mummy. We were talking about her before the stream. What do you think? What do you think, Master?
What do you mean? What do I think?
Is she as sexualized as other WayForward games?
I don't think so. I think she's just kind of there.
Yeah.
This is cool, boss. This game is really well done, in my opinion, like graphically speaking and music and all that stuff. The presentation's fantastic.
I think the way I described this was that it's like a game that takes all the stuff that Castlevania did wrong and put that in, and all the stuff that Metroid did wrong and put that in.
I take it you didn't like it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this one.
But I mean, they are good games that, it's just it took the worst aspects of both of them.
But as we all know, I have very eclectic tastes, so I like different things.
So basically, it's Metroid combat and Castlevania level design.
This is a completely different tangent, but what do you think about bosses that let you heal from killing ads while you're fighting them?
It usually makes it way too easy. I did not realize that this game had the death mechanic it has because I beat the whole game without dying.
I actually think it's kind of a cool death mechanic, but yeah, I actually died a few times. I may die in this clip. I actually did not review these clips because I didn't have time, so I picked games that I didn't think would have content that would be super spoilers if I just showed the game, so like Astalon, I had to review it because I had to actually cut things out of it when I did that.
I think it's good to be able to heal and sustain yourself during bosses.
I don't like it when it's tied to a random drop, though.
No.
Because then it feels like a slot machine.
So, do you like
does
it when you hit an enemy, you get your health back?
Are you talking like the Bloodborne rally system?
No, I'm specifically talking about I forget the name of it. The Hollow Knight ripoff that you played on stream.
No.
Gleamlight.
Okay, so as always, I'll emphasize that I do not believe there is such a thing as a bad mechanic, just bad implementation. Yeah. And I don't think Gleamlight is a example of any good implementations.
Also, for context, Gleamlight's not actually a Hollow Knight ripoff, because it's nothing like Hollow Knight. That's just a joke.
Yeah.
It's you know what you're talking about when you're trying to remember what the name of the game is. Oh gosh, that's so funny. Hopefully Crowsworn's actually good, so I'm pretty sure it will be, but
yeah. But yeah, like when you can heal during a boss fight, it does like give kind of it removes that sense of danger to me.
It kind of does, but it also makes the boss more forgiving in a good way. If, say, you see an attack for the first time and it's not intuitive what it's going to do, and you take a lot of damage, now you're almost dead.
That's what I like to call a band-aid fix. That if the design was good enough in the first place, you wouldn't need it.
That's fair.
What was the headline? Oh, Niche Gamer has a headline that says, New Metroidvania Crowsworn has spandex-tight controls. I'm like, I don't know if I would use spandex-tight as an analogy.
Has there been a demo out for that or anything?
No, I have no idea where they're getting this from. Well, there might be a demo, but it's possible that they're giving it to media people.
Or maybe they were considering Crowcart to be the demo.
I don't know.
Maybe they just watched the trailer and thought the controls looked tight. Well, so they made an article about it.
It's like these curators that put all these games in their curator that aren't even out yet. And they're like, it's this and this. I'm like, how are you even making these claims?
These people are the worst.
It's like they read the store page and just take its word for it.
It is possible that there's a demo that they've only given to certain people.
This is absolutely possible.
True, but in a lot of situations, what do you think's more plausible? That there are secret demos going out to random curators on Steam? People are just putting out random recommendations.
Well, I mean, if they say that that's what they got, you kind of have to take their word for it, I guess.
Yeah,
but
it's like, you know what? I generally prefer to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Even if it's unlikely to be true.
Sure, yeah. But I mean, if they don't even claim to have a key, then it's just bullcrap at that point. You gotta at least make the claim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might die. Let's see what happens here. Oh.
You have a whole other.
Oh wait. I have. Okay, so I forgot this had Metroid rules.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think about the energy tank, system?
Okay, it works fine. It works fine in the 2D Metroids, except for maybe Metroid Fusion. I need to play that game again so I can really analyze the gameplay on that one, because my favorite part about it is the story, and I felt the gameplay was a little bit. I might talk about it when I stream it at some point, but like Super Metroid and Metroid 2 and the original. It works pretty good because they usually scale up the damage of the enemies, so it kind of makes it an exploration wall. I guess that's how Fusion uses it too. But like Metroid Prime, it never really, you just kind of got overpowered because every time you got one, you got 100 HP, and you kind of didn't need that.
Yeah, the problem with tanks is that it just makes your power scaling super weird.
Right. I mean, you got this breakpoint issue with any health system. Like, if you start with 3 hearts in Zelda, you're getting 30% more HP when you get your first heart up, and then, then it's a 25% more HP, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just
also find hard pieces. And with energy tanks, you could just miss the room it's in, and then the game assumes you have double the HP you actually do. for your first one.
That's what I was about to say. Is that the thing with Metroid is that breakpoint, instead of being a fraction of extra HP, it's literally double HP the first time you get it, and 50% more the second time, and etc.
Yeah. So they end up making just really obvious ones that you find because they want you to have a couple by the time you know damage starts scaling up.
It's a system that's mostly balanced in the first 3 games. That it kind of weighs down. I don't know. I mean, AM2R I thought was fine. I guess it just depends. The Metroid Prime series shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, like Prime 3 just has like there are ones you physically cannot go around because they want you to have health because you need it for the hyper.
I was about to say, Prime 3, they tried to solve the issue where you had too much health in those games by making it so your health was ammo, and I didn't really like that either, because then you're kind of forced to have bosses that drop health all the time, because otherwise it would just be too brutal. Especially for how often the Hyper Beam is required. But in general, I don't like the Hyper Beam system.
Maybe they should just start you with 3 energy tanks or something like that.
That would work.
Well, that would make it Zelda, essentially.
Yeah, it would.
And Zelda, like, the Zelda system is a little bit better than the Metroid system, I think.
Yeah. Do you know what I really like? The Phenotopia system, where you just get, like, pieces of health every time you level up.
People don't like or at least people who make these games seem to have the impression that people don't like the numbers. They'd prefer, you know, having like discrete elements, like heart pieces, even though you end up having fractions of those, and essentially they're not much different from just having numbers.
Well, isn't the energy tank system the worst of both worlds then?
Yeah. So, Belfast Belmont says, heart pieces are an excellent example of a repetitive collectible that doesn't get old very fast and doesn't result in a broken scaling or requiring players to try and find everything. Maybe. Like, so the whole point of heart pieces is just to make it so instead of you getting a heart every time like in the original Zelda, you break it up a little bit to make it so there are more collectibles in the game. The problem with heart pieces, though, is that unless you get that 4th heart piece, you're literally getting nothing for the collectible. And that doesn't necessarily feel good. Sometimes the heart piece will heal you, and that's helpful. But again, I like the Phenotopia system more, where you just get 3 extra HP. You get the benefit right away, it's usable right away, and the more you get, the more HP you have. It's great.
It is nice.
Isn't that pretty
Because for
similar
some
to
reason
the
people are too
energy-
scared to do that in their games.
Yeah.
Isn't that pretty similar to the energy tank system, except you just start with more energy tanks, basically?
It is like the energy tank system, but instead of getting 100, you just get 3. It's fine.
And if you started with 3 health, then yeah, they'd be functionally equivalent, but
Right.
there's a clear difference there.
Yeah, I think you start with like 40 HP in Phenotopia, I want to say. Does that sound right?
So you could start the game with 13 energy tanks, and it would be basically the same.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you just multiply everything by 100. But then you need to be like taking 100 damage every time for it to balance out. It really comes down to breaking points ultimately. Like, how many hits does it take until you die?
Yeah, all these are kind of arbitrary because out of the context of their respective game, you don't really know what that health means.
Yeah, there's system design.
Comparing
There's system design and content design. And your system design needs to or your content needs to match the systems you create. And
Yeah, somebody uses the Knights of the Round on you when you're
yeah,
when you have like Phenotopia health or Metroid health, you're just going to go down.
right.
I think any HP system can work, even if it's one of the ones we described as being inferior, you know, just depending on how the game implements it.
Right. It all comes down to the content in the end. But sometimes players get enamored with the systems, and I'm like, the content doesn't back it up. Like, Mega Man 6 is a great example of this. You have this great jetpack, but there's not really any place that it really shines as a tool, as a utility. Like, there's an occasional shortcut, but that's nothing that the original Rush Jet couldn't have done.
Don't you lose the slide when you have that thing equipped?
Yeah, you do.
Or was that just 7?
No, it's 6 as well. I thought that 7 did a decent job with it because it was just a double jump in that game, and that's just, everybody knows what double jumps are like if they play Metroidvania games. But 6, the jetpack actually had some dynamic movement to it that could have been really interesting, but they just didn't create any content for it to really be anything other than a novelty. Also, the Mega Man 7 jetpack was literally more powerful than your regular form because it had as a charge shot. That's actually really good.
Yeah.
I will say, I'd rather see energy tanks than heart containers just because I'm sick of seeing heart containers because so many games use that system.
Yeah.
I personally don't like heart pieces that much. I like games that have them, like I like Hollow Knight just fine, but it's not my... I prefer the more incremental health upgrades. I would honestly prefer energy tanks, yeah. But that's probably Metroid bias right there, because I'm biased for Metroid.
I don't really have much of an opinion on like energy tanks versus just flat HP and having an HP that is numbers. But my one opinion is that the heart pieces are a bit boring and common to see, which is why they're boring. But I mean, they work.
So anyway, the definition of the Metroidvania. Let's your outline, Cauldrath. Let's dive into that. Since
Oh yeah.
that is what we said we're going to do tonight.
Hey, we don't have any obligation there.
We're all avoiding it. I sort of announced that that's what we're doing. That is what it says on the stream here.
Alright, do you want me to read off the things, or...
I actually don't have a copy of it, so I don't have a choice but to ask you to do that.
I guess I can just link it in the Twitch chat, and then anyone can follow along?
Yeah, if you're willing to share it that way. It's up to you. I'll go ahead and click that.
It's a virus, don't click it.
It's not a virus, it's a Rickroll.
The definition of Metroidvania, see inside. Okay.
Metroidvania is never going to give you up, never going to let you down.
Anyway, I can let you, it's perfectly fine if you want to drive this.
Alright, okay. Well, so it is my thing, but, like, you guys decided you wanted to discuss it.
Sure.
So, well, I guess I can... Okay, so the very first thing... The very first thing is, like, talking about what the video is going to be and isn't going to be. So...
Oh, real quick. I'm going to link this in the YouTube comments, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can click down and look at it down there, too. Anyway, go on, Calder.
Okay, yeah, so the first thing is talking about how I'm not an authority, like I don't have a PhD in Metroidness. A lot of videos talking about the definition of Metroidvanias like present a definition and say this is the definition. It's like, why am I going to care what you say? Like, why should I believe that your definition is the definition? So the point of this video is not going to be this is what the definition is, because I don't have any authority to make that determination. So yeah, it's going to be a video about like categorizing definitions and giving reasons why you would choose different definitions and like pros and cons of that. And then like the third thing on here is noting that it's going to be discussing what makes a game a Metroidvania and not what makes a game a good Metroidvania. Which is what I feel like a lot of people get mixed up in their definitions, where they want to include things because they think that games that don't have those things are bad games. But I believe that bad Metroidvanias can exist. so the
Yeah,
definition doesn't have to exclude them.
Metroidvanias aren't an exclusive club. It's the facts, man.
Right.
You can have a turd sandwich, but at the end of the day, it's still a sandwich.
Going back to the sandwich analogy. Yeah, I mean,
Have a hot dog between two hot dogs and it's still a sandwich.
that's
Just sandwich for the thumbnail.
That's like a trailer. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say trailer park. That's like a double down, though.
We're moving on to a new game.
Yeah. By the way, this is LA Quest. Anyway, people try to tell me that I'm somehow an authority on Metroidvanias just because I've played over 150 of them. But I'm not willing to define the genre.
Yeah, it's like how many games do you have to play to suddenly become an authority on Metroidvania?
And just because I think it's a Metroidvania doesn't mean you have to agree with me.
Right.
I'm probably gonna die a lot in this footage. I was like, wait, this part.
Right, and then the next thing is going into the origins of the word Metroidvania, basically talking about like Jeremy Parrish didn't actually coin it, but is like the first person that it was attributed to, and that it was like mostly used to describe games like Symphony of the Night because they were like Metroid. And then like I'm gonna make a bunch of Venn diagrams where it like shows overlaps between Super Metroid and Castlevania, and talking about how different overlaps follow different definitions. Like the most traditional thing is saying that the Metroidvania is kind of the overlap in the features that are in both Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But there's some people that think that like if it doesn't include things that are specific to Symphony of the Night, then it's a Metroid-like. So then that like kind of has a different Venn diagram to it. And then there's also diagrams that talk about how Metroidvania might be the overlap of the things that are unique to both Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And then like a final one that's talking about how it might be the things unique to Super Metroid compared to other games that came out at the same time as Super Metroid versus things unique to Castlevania Symphony of the Night compared to games that came out at the same time as it. So that actually winds up being one of those things arguing for 2D not being part of the definition, because pretty much all the games that came out at the same time as Super Metroid were 2D.
Right. I think that was kind of a necessity at the time, though.
Yeah.
Didn't really.
So claiming that Metroidvania 2D is part of the Metroidvania definition because Super Metroid was 2D doesn't really make a lot of sense. Whereas claiming that it does because of Symphony of the Night makes a bit more sense.
I mean, I guess it's possible that something like Doom could have been a Metroidvania.
When did Doom come out, though?
93.
Yeah, 93, I think, which is the same year as Super Metroid, right? So if Doom had ability gating and a large contiguous world, it could have been a 3D Metroidvania.
Super Metroid was 94, I think. I mean, there are also different versions of Doom that were released.
Right. I guess my point is that there is a prevalent 3D game that is still being played today that came out at that time.
Sorry, the exact year is not that important. It's close enough.
Sure. Wolfenstein 3D was definitely out before Super Metroid came out.
Yeah. And there were like some of those like line-based 3D games.
Yeah, vector games.
Yeah.
But
they weren't very common.
But I also wonder if, like, could you have made a massive world with the Doom engine? I don't think you could.
Probably not on the Super Nintendo.
You'd need to break it into levels. I mean, you can like have kind of large-ish maps with Doom, but if you have anything really big, it will get laggy.
I was actually surprised when I killed that thing with the bomb because I wasn't expecting it to happen. Glad it did, though. It saved me from having to get an upgrade before I could get this secret. So, okay, Venn diagrams. There's a couple of things to unpack there. I know that some of us vehemently disagree with the idea that Metroidvania refers specifically to Castlevania games that are Metroidvania, or they have Metroid-like elements.
Doesn't everyone disagree with that?
No.
For the two people who argue randomly.
Everyone with taste disagrees with that.
So everybody on stream disagrees with that. Why do we disagree with that? Why can't that be the definition of Metroidvania?
I mean,
It's extremely exclusive for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's part of it. I mean, like, how many games are like Castlevania? Like, how many would actually be Metroidvanias if that was the definition that we went with?
well, they usually just say that it requires RPG elements. So
Now we're going back to defining what RPG means.
or level up mechanics.
Sure. But
So
you could argue that Metroid is Zelda-like, and if Zelda is an RPG, then clearly Metroid's also an RPG.
So like, yeah, so Chasm, Time Spinner are obviously games that are heavily inspired by Castlevania, and
Ooh.
would probably
What about Salt and Sanctuary? Salt and Sanctuary has a leveling system.
Oh no. Enter the third party. Souls-likes.
But does a Souls-like stop it from being a Metroidvania?
well, obviously Hollow Knight is a Souls-like and a Metroidvania, so no.
But is Hollow Knight a Metroidvania? Not by that definition, it's not. I just think it's funny that people like there was somebody who put out a tweet and it's like, stop calling everything Metroidvania when it should just be the Castlevania stuff. I'm like, but why is that useful? Like, why would you exclusively apply that to those? Like, is the phrase even useful at that point?
Yeah, like that is something I mentioned like way further down is kind of the difference between roguelike and roguelite. Because so roguelike is a useful definition if you're looking for a game that is precisely like the game that you're trying to like find another game like. Whereas roguelite is better if you're trying to find things that like expand the genre. And kind of focuses down on one specific part of a genre that you could combine with other elements, and so you could find other games that have those elements that you like, but then they bring other things in along with it. And this is the Castlevania only is probably the most restrictive one, so the like most roguelike versus roguelite version of the definition.
So what would be? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think the best way to deal with that with Metroidvania is to just clarify if the game you're talking about is you could say true Metroidvania or classic Metroidvania. Then just call anything kind of close-ish Metroidvania, and things that aren't Metroidvanias to most people, you could just say they have elements of Metroidvanias.
Yeah, but what does classic Metroidvania mean? Or true
For classic Metroidvania, I'd say a game... It'd be like the strict definition of Metroidvania. Just so people who are looking for, another Super Metroid or something can find that.
But Super Metroid isn't a Metroidvania according to the strictest definition.
So do you know what I like about this whole Castlevania argument is that Koji Igarashi coined Igavania, which is just as useful for determining or for separating out specifically the Castlevania Metroidvania type game.
The term already exists.
Well, no, it's been created since then, and now that we have Igavania, we can stop arguing and just use Metroidvania for the broader category.
Exactly.
Is Circle of the Moon a Igavania?
Yeah, I would say that it's an Igavania-like game.
Well, we already have some disagreement.
It's better than Iga's games.
It's not technically directed by Koji Igarashi. So in that sense, if you define Igavania as games only made by Koji Igarashi, then sure, but...
Okay, what Iga called an Igavania?
Is Gradius 2 an Igavania?
Would Iga call it an Igavania? So is that what it is? Now Koji Igarashi is the authority on what is an Igavania and what's not an Igavania?
I'm not making any arguments here, I'm just curious.
You know what? Let's go write him a letter. We'll say, hey, Koji, what's up?
Because I get the impression reading some of the interviews that he disliked the game because it made some departures from what he would have wanted it to be. And my theory is that he then made Harmony of Dissonance trying to be Symphony of the Night 2, and it sucked because of that.
So
then he gave up and just made a better game with Aria.
Melphus Belmont wants to say something. What are you going to say, Melphus Belmont?
Of course, this is also just attributing like a group of people making games to one person, which it shouldn't have to be said because, I mean, we do this a lot. You know, it's a group of people working on something. It's not just one person's ideas. But it's easier to describe a game as just being made by that one person.
Nothing was wrong. Nothing was in the wrong field. I'm not sure.
What does that mean?
Okay. He was saying he didn't mean to say in this field.
Well,
go ahead.
Going back to the beginning of the outline where I talk about how I'm not an authority, what would you consider would you consider Igarashi to be an authority on Metroidvanias to the point that you would accept his definition of a Metroidvania?
So here's the thing: is that I don't think he was willing to accept that onus because he came up with a Igavania instead of calling it a Metroidvania. So
I don't know who an expert would be. I mean, I guess like some sort of critic.
I would say that Jeremy Parrish is probably the closest thing, but he thinks that Cave Story is a Metroidvania, so obviously we shouldn't listen to him.
I agree.
If Jeremy ever listens to this, I'm only kidding, Jeremy.
Never played Cave Story.
You should. It's a good game.
Classic.
Just want to say that, like, half the time when I state opinion, I don't actually have an opinion. I'm just memeing.
I would say he's probably the closest thing to an authority on the subject, in my opinion. I mean, I could try.
You said he wasn't the one who coined the phrase.
If I were to try and be the guy who comes up with the definition, I would probably get a group of people together and collaborate.
So if the three of us tried to come up with a definition and we actually agreed, then that's good enough?
I would like to get some, because we agree on probably too many things. So it might be good to get somebody who has a dissenting opinion to come in and maybe come up with reasons why we shouldn't use a certain definition.
How do people come up with definitions of, say, like, art movements?
Usually it just comes from like a really good researcher / writer who coins the phrase, and then people just pick up on it. It's kind of like how we started using the word Metroidvania in the first place.
Maybe it's like when other genres get defined, they actually define them, and it isn't a problem of, oh, we came up with this term, but we never defined it. And so on down the line, nobody wants to like actually accept. It's kind of like the GIF thing, where like you didn't like actually say the pronunciation in any reasonable time frame, so you kind of lost the authority on how it's pronounced.
Sure.
And so like Jeremy Parish has lost the chance to be the authority on the definition of a Metroidvania. Like if he had said Cave Story is a Metroidvania way back in like early 2000, then we'd be more accepting of it than we are today.
So I'm a bad Metroidvania fan. For all I know, Jeremy Parish has done that. I just haven't gotten around to watching his videos yet. I should. I need to, but it's very possible that he does have a video about the definition of Metroidvania. We're all just wasting our time here because we should just go to his video and use it. I don't think he does, because everybody would be linking it if every time this comes up, if it did exist.
And if he made it like today, it wouldn't like really matter.
Right. If he asserted that it only refers to games that are like Castlevania, the Castlevania Metroidvania games, then we would reject it because we couldn't include Hollow Knight in that definition.
Yeah.
Or could we? Are the charms enough?
What is the difference between you, Q, and an art critic?
What is the difference between me and an art critic? I don't think anything. Are you saying
is an art critic?
Yeah.
It's just the art that he criticizes or critiques are Metroidvanias.
Yeah, I don't think there is a difference between me and an art critic. I mean, with the exception of that, it takes a different skill set to, critique a painting versus a video game, unless you're specifically going after the graphics.
There is no reason why you cannot decide to coin a new phrase or genre.
You're saying I should change the name, or I should define it?
No, I'm just saying, if you're going to choose an authority on genre, you choose someone who's reviewed a lot of games in that genre, because that's the equivalent of an art critic.
Sure.
And I mean,
I think it also needs to have not just that they do the reviews, but also that they have prestige or renown. And I don't think I'm quite there yet. And even if I was, I wouldn't abuse the authority.
You guys think I'm enough of an authority on Crest-like to be the person who determines that definition?
Sure. I mean, you made it up. You're the only one using it at this point. So you better get that. You better get a thorough definition in there, because we're all going to be screwed if you don't.
It is kind of like tied to the definition of Metroidvania, though. It's like Metroidvanias, except they have a level select. So,
I mean, hey, if you Google Crest, the first thing that comes up is Atsuro's post on the subreddit, which
oh, now Atsuro's the authority now. You lost it.
No, she asserts that it was you who coined it.
Oh.
Yeah.
She gave you credit.
So, your name's out there. If people look into Crest likes, they will. If it becomes a popular term, they will find that post, and they will discover that you are the owner of this genre.
So, Melphis Belmont is asking about Mega Man likes.
Well, they're similar to Crest likes, but they don't have ability gating.
No. I mean, arguably the X series does, but is the X series a Mega Man, or is the X series a Crest like?
No, because it's there's no ability gating for progression, just for side upgrades. So I guess that is something that should be specified.
So is Gargoyle's quest a Crest like?
I believe it does have. Actually, do you have to backtrack ever in Gargoyle's quest?
Not really.
Yeah, I don't think you do.
I mean, you have to backtrack to the towns to like talk to them to get the items sometimes, but not in any gameplay sense. And when I say, I mean, technically being in the town is part of the gameplay, but so this instant death stuff is what makes the death mechanics in this game a little bit frustrating. Because you lose like a good chunk of your EXP every time you die, but then they have rooms like this that'll, like if you don't get good quickly, then you'll just lose all that EXP, and if you haven't leveled up recently, it could feel like a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
I laughed a little when you fell into the lava earlier.
Oh, prepare to laugh a lot, because I'm pretty sure I die like 4 more times in this room.
Seems
Almost
like
get-
annoying level design. Having these enemies that you can't kill. Can you kill them?
No, I can't, and I don't know, I don't remember what kills them. I think the spell that you need to kill them, you don't get until the last dungeon.
It seems like they just sort of randomly move around towards you, which means you can get yourself in situations where you can't avoid them. Seems really annoying.
They move slow enough that you can kind of kite them around, but yeah, they're yeah, you know. I ended up giving this game a 3 out of 5. I like it a lot, but there's it's got things like that. So anyway, definition of Metroidvania. So that was the Venn diagram. I think
Oh yeah, we have so much to go.
Oh, yeah, we're totally not making it through this.
No. So let's move on to the next segment.
Yeah, so the next thing is talking about ability gating. So let's see. First thing is talking about switch gating, which is just like you hit a switch and it opens something, which is obviously not ability gating.
By the way, this could be the most boring game design ever, so be very careful how you use switch gating.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times I think that people put switches in games just to pad it, like not to... It's not interesting unless you make it interesting. I don't know how else to say it.
Well,
Would you
like Dark Souls level design is often like switch gated.
I was about to say that opening a door from the other side is the equivalent of just having a switch that opens the door.
Sure. See, but here's the thing about the way Dark Souls does it, is that it feels more like an exploration activity rather than I am doing this because the game wants me to flip switches. Like, when you flip a switch in Dark Souls, it's kind of an aha moment, the way it's designed. Whereas a game that does it poorly, you know you're flipping switches, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That's true. Opening a lot of those doors, you're usually discovering some sort of shortcut, and it helps you connect the world together.
Right, you don't already know that your goal is to get a switch. It's something you discover.
Right.
Yeah,
Instead
like
of just seeing a switch on the wall, it's like, oh, I better go press that, and then you press it, and then the Zelda cue plays, and your 10-second cutscene shows you that a door opened 5 feet away.
Yeah, like ringing the bells in Dark Souls is technically a switch.
Yeah, and honestly, that's probably... I mean, it's not the best aspect of that game, ringing the bells. It's a goal, but...
Ring the bells in that way, that's no different from any final objective, which
that's
you
true.
could just call switch gating.
Yeah, I mean...
At that point, on like such a level where I wouldn't really call it switch gating,
Is getting the flag at the end of the Mario level a switch gate.
Oh, and at Sarah, we already talked about Crest Likes. You're too late.
Sorry, Edsero.
Yeah, I credited you for crediting Cauldrath on the subpost.
Yeah, you're part of the authority of Crest Likes now.
Yeah.
You and Cauldrath are the authority.
But yeah, like there's a lot of ways you can, a lot of things that are effectively switch gating that are kind of obscured. Like plot gating is basically switch gating, where like whenever a certain plot event is triggered, it effectively throws the switch, and now you can get through that area.
How do you define a switch? Because you can call a lot of things switch gating.
Yeah, where you can, because like it's anything that causes something to open up that. Yeah, I guess anything that causes something to open up.
I usually think of switch gating to be the bare minimum of just like flipping a switch or the equivalent, and it's pretty obvious that you're flipping a switch.
Just real quick, I want to point out that for whatever reason, apparently my Automod has just completely given up on Atsuro because that F-bomb just got straight through.
Oh,
I'm not complaining, I just think it's funny.
I'd call the bells. I mean, they're kind of plot gating, but also plot gating often means like a plot event that's not necessarily tied to what you're like. Something happens in the world not directly tied to that door, but you had to do the thing not directly tied to the door to open the door through the plot.
Yeah. And also, like, bosses generally are switch gating, like forms of switch gating. Like, you go into the boss room, and then you have to kill the boss, and then that effectively throws the switch that opens the door.
Now, I want to quickly clarify that I was positioning myself as being kind of negative on switch gating. I don't necessarily think it's bad. I just think that it can be very poorly done sometimes.
There are various types of actions that do something. Like that's what a switch gate is. It's an action that does something. You do an action, and then that action it changes the environment somehow.
Let's describe it as a trigger that does not require an ability or a carried item.
I was going more into just like you can define those sorts of gates in a lot of different ways, and you don't have to think about it as just being a switch. But there is a difference between one of those events compared to an ability.
Right. Yeah, I'm just putting everything under the umbrella of switch gating that, like, when the environment is affected without having to use, like, an ability or a key.
It's usually like some sort of binary action you commit, and it changes something.
Yeah.
And Atsuro, this game having Zelda vibes is very astute because it was very much inspired by Zelda, and that was the goal it was going for. It was making a Zelda 2-like.
Just like Symphony of the Night?
Yeah, just like Symphony of the Night, except nothing like Symphony of the Night. Because it didn't end up Metroid, it ended up Zelda.
I mean, I think Igarashi's a liar.
That was the joke that I was making.
If you're hearing this,
if you're hearing this, I think you're a liar.
So this game actually used Super Metroid sound effects, I think, during its early stages of development, because I think I saw a trailer for it where it had literal Link to the Past sounds in it. Also,
that death seemed kind of BS.
Welcome to Elliot Quest. You just gotta swallow it. I don't know why I did that there. I think that may have been an accident. Or maybe I was resetting it because the pattern wasn't favorable.
I took damage way too early. Let's just start this over.
It may have been my attitude. Usually I don't have that attitude because I'm learning a pattern, but I may have already decided that the pattern's good enough for me at this point. Anyway, one of these times I'd like to stream the final boss of this game and complain about it. I think I said we're going to do that sometime, but we didn't do it this time.
Are authorities the critics or the people making the thing? This is just not something we have to go into, but it's something I just realized we didn't actually discuss too much, and we could totally discuss that for 20 minutes.
Yeah, like, if Team Cherry decided they wanted to make a Metroidvania definition, would you accept it?
I don't know. They didn't want to call Hollow Knight a Metroidvania, but obviously it is, so they're obviously wrong.
But if, say you are, like the guy with the mustache, Salvador Dali, and you're doing your surreal thing, and you say, yeah, this is surrealism. I have no idea if he was the first of the first people to really commit to that or anything. That's just a random example. I'm not a historian.
Here's what I'm going to do. If I can get a petition of 100,000 people that say that they'll accept my definition of Metroidvania if I make one, then I'll go ahead and do it. I don't
Wow,
actually.
they'd have to agree without seeing your definition.
Yeah. Without seeing my definition, they have to.
Yeah,
They
I
have
don't
to
think
sign the
that's happening.
petition. You don't think anybody's ever going to do that? Nobody trusts me enough.
Oh,
I like how it's Sarah's like, yeah, no, I know what you're like.
yeah. Even if I found somebody who 100% like agreed with me on the definition of a Metroidvania, I still wouldn't
But
agree to that.
I appreciate that it's Sarah who doesn't think I'm going to troll. She says that I'm too nice, so that's why she doesn't want me to do it because I'm not going to be strict enough. Sarah doesn't think that Astalon Tears of the Earth is a Metroidvania though, so she definitely has a more strict definition than I do.
Actually, like you've given a definition for a Metroidvania before. I've given a definition for a Metroidvania before. I don't think I've seen a definition from Master yet.
The silence.
I don't like having opinions.
Oh, we're switching, by the way. That means we're at the hour. So this one's Interdigiton, which is you got a shield, which it's technically not a non-violent Metroidvania, but your main weapon's a shield, and it's mostly platforming focused, but it has bosses, and I'm starting on one of the bosses. Who's adorable? The main character is adorable in this game?
Or Master being scared of making it, like saying a definition is adorable.
Oh, sure. I've given a definition, but as you know, my definition is extraordinarily broad.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's adequate. And I think I called it a tentative definition. Like if I were to make a video, that would be possibly what I used.
Yeah, I think you put like tentative definition number 17 or something like that.
Something like that. I think I put 17 as an arbitrary number because I'm sure that I've... I feel like it's a video that I need to make, but I also don't want to make it because I know that nobody's going to be happy with it, regardless of what I say.
Right. Are you going to state like an actual definition? Like say this is the definition of a Metroidvania?
No, I'd probably take the same approach you're taking and talk about what people think the definition is and then kind of leave it up to the viewer to decide. But then again, I've kind of given up on the idea of doing it at this point. We'll see how I feel next year. But
yeah, I'm gonna have to gather a lot of clips for this.
Oh yeah.
So that's gonna take a while. Okay, so I guess we could go on to discussing what key gating is, where it's basically like we know what keys are.
Yeah,
But
so
then,
It's like a Switch, but you carry it with you in your pocket.
yeah,
right. That's pretty much it. But an ability can also be a key if it serves no other purpose than to open something.
yeah. So yeah, I say that I'm going to discuss the key ability spectrum. So like, there's a difference between a pure ability and a pure key, and then there's a like spectrum in between, where like a pure key would be like there you have a key or something that looks like a key, and there's a single door. You walk up to the door, and then you use the key on the door, and then the key goes away, and that's the only door that you can use the key on, and that is like the most pure key. And then like an ability, the most pure ability would be something that you can use literally everywhere in the game world.
And it's actually useful.
Yeah. So like a wall jump is like 99% of the time an ability, but technically there are areas where there's no walls, so therefore it's like slightly off being a 100% ability on the spectrum.
I mean, I think once you get above a certain percentage, it really doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you can technically have something that has no walls, but in most games, that's not the case.
And then like even double jump, there's areas where the ceiling is too low for you to jump,
Sure.
and so you can't use double jump. So that's like even more of an exception. So it's like a 99.9% ability.
Yeah, I just think the distinction isn't that important. Unless, like, if there's a specific game that has a quirk where it doesn't have walls or something, then that would apply there. But for like, the game you'd expect that has wall jumping, it would be an ability.
Yeah. But the point is that it's a spectrum. Like,
It is a spectrum.
yeah. So then, like, further towards the like key side, there's all the stuff in Blasphemous where it's like you can jump into bottomless pits. Like, yeah, those work wherever there's bottomless pits. Like, they stop being bottomless for some reason.
Well, I mean, when you really think about it, it's not that it ever has a bottom. It's that you're just most likely going to die before you get there. Well, I guess technically you die when you get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
I said that incorrectly.
On the ground.
Actually be bottomless and you just like starve to death or die from dehydration on your way down.
What was that? That was the strongman thing. When you fall down a bottomless pit, you die of starvation. That would be a very weird end to your existence. Just free falling until you just lose consciousness.
Yeah.
About topless pits.
Can you say topless pits?
Yeah.
Okay.
What?
I don't know what that. I don't think you could even fall into a topless pit. Like, how do you?
I thought you said topless spit, and I thought you were referring to the boss on this game. I'm like, how is this topless? I mean, he's like all top. Oh gosh, the boss. This boss, I would not recommend going to this boss early like I did here. It just takes a long time to kill. This is one of those games where you kind of have to wait till the boss does something that allows you to hurt it, because the whole premise behind this game is because you only have a shield, you can't deal damage.
It's like
So-
a fun gimmick, even though it could get tedious at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does make it so that it has to be kind of like your
Parry.
combat is kind of it's passive combat.
Right.
You're not only parrying them, you have to dodge and stuff before you can parry.
I still believe that you can make a parryful game like Grind was supposed to be, or at least like I thought it was going to be.
So I think Vigil actually did it right, because you're just so overpowered that the parry and the like dodge roll are just like another part of the kit.
Just be overpowered. That's the trick. Did you
Yeah.
play on the hardest difficulty when you played that game?
I think I played normal.
Oh well, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
On the well, I don't remember what the hardest difficulty was called. Maybe it was just hard, but it starts out extraordinarily difficult. But as soon as you get that spell that you can just exploit, it's just kind of a joke at that point.
So, you know how some games will have giant fans as a trope and they shoot you into the air?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
If you stay on the fan too long, or if you have platforms going up to the ceiling, it could be one of those games that just kills you. And I would call that a topless pit.
Really a pit at that point?
Well, I mean, what is a pit?
A miserable pile of secrets. Something that you can fall into.
Okay, so you had key gating, you had switch gating. What was the last one? Just an ability gate?
Let's see. Yeah, I guess it was just switch, key, and ability, and there's a spectrum between key and ability. I don't think you can really make a spectrum between switch and ability.
No, not really.
But then, like, yeah, so you can... There's also games that have temporary upgrades, and it's like questionable whether or not you would include those in like an ability gating.
Does that have anything to do with being a Metroidvania at all? Like the temporary upgrades?
But yeah, I guess the question is like, okay, if your game is gated by say like or I guess Wario Land 3 had like temporary upgrades that gated areas off, right?
Right.
So that would be an example of a game with temporary upgrades that gate, and there is a question whether those would count as ability gating.
Vampire Upgrade is really good.
Oh, actually, I have an interesting example. So how about Cathedral? You have the points where you switch your abilities. Are those switches?
Oh yeah, like you can only have one of the two mobility upgrades equipped at the same time until you get the last version.
I mean, you're switching your ability.
Yeah.
I don't really think that's the same thing.
Yeah, those are like semi-permanent upgrades, I guess.
Cathedral's the only game I can think of that actually does that. Which I thought was really interesting, having to choose between the dash and the double jump for a while. That was good.
Well, Super Metroid, you have to choose between the Spazer and the Plasma Beam.
Yeah, that's not really a choice, though.
Yeah.
There's a correct option.
There's a correct option, and there's the one you get before.
Right.
I can't think of any reason why you would ever pick Spazer. Especially after you get the wave beam, because it just makes it like narrow anyway.
It's a little bit wider.
Yeah.
Like there could be some very specific situation where the hitbox of the plasma beam doesn't hit something and the Spazer will.
So speaking of crest likes, this game is a little bit more like Mega Man in the sense that you kind of have 4 directions you can go in any order you want. And you technically don't need any powers from any of the areas, but they help you get a hold of secrets when you go to those areas, and they make things easier. So this is a Mega Man like.
Yeah, so more like Mega Man X.
Yeah.
So back to the outline. Oh yeah, so there's a lot of games that they kind of have ability gating, or they have gates that are opened by abilities, but they don't give you you don't encounter the gates until after you've gotten the ability, and so those aren't really gates at that point, even though they would have been if you could have encountered them before you got the ability. So yeah, I would consider that to be something that excludes them from counting as ability gates.
So like Kid Dracula, where you play games in a linear succession and you get powers that you use in the next level. Technically functioning like a Metroidvania would, except that there's no way you could have encountered those areas until after you've got the ability.
Right.
I'm not even sure what to call that kind of progression. I guess layering progression. It's not a bad way to design your game. In fact, I'm surprised more games don't do it.
So one game that people bring up as being like Metroidvania-like that does do that is Prey. So yeah, that's an example there. I'm not sure what point I was trying to make there.
I got distracted by my jelly beans.
Oh, Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth. Yeah, Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth is like that. You have a linear succession of levels that you get abilities. Technically, each section has a little bit of Metroidvania-ness to it, but you're correct. It is like that, where it is mostly linear.
Yeah. I think the Tomb Raider games were like that too. At least the beginning of Arkham Asylum was that way. I guess there is another gating type that I want, like included in the next thing. Knowledge gating, like Tokitori 2. I guess the Witness kind of, like, I haven't played that, but apparently that has it. And then Outer Wilds kind of is that way.
I would say Rain World is into that.
Yeah.
So, with the Witness, if you replace solving puzzles with like an ability, and learning, the place where you learn how to solve the puzzles is the place where you get the ability, then the Witness absolutely has knowledge gating.
Missed one, Milphus Belmont says.
Yeah.
Though I wouldn't just call any puzzle game as having knowledge gating.
Or like in Super Metroid with the wall jump and the Shine Spark. Those are kind of knowledge gates.
That's true.
So yeah, like that's also a question of whether that would be something that qualifies something as being a Metroidvania. I think most people would probably say no, but it's still a little iffy. And I don't have it on the outline, but I probably should also bring up soft ability gates. Like Sekiro has the enemies that you have to kill that are much easier to kill if you have certain of the ninja tools.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's the guys with shields that if you have the axe, you can just break the shield and then kill them. But if you don't, then they're a huge pain. And then like the parts of Super Metroid where you can sequence break if you know how to wall jump. Or if you bomb jump. So I guess knowledge gating is kind of like like goes along with sequence breaking in games that have it.
I mean, in any game really, if you know more about the game, you can do more things.
Right. But there isn't always just like there's this area that you can only get to if you know this thing. Or like you can only get to this area if you either have this ability or know this thing.
This is me getting very impatient. Sometimes I play later than than I probably should too. Light items, yeah, light items are a soft ability gate.
Oh yeah.
I would probably put knowledge gating off to the side. It's a thing that games can have, but I wouldn't really attempt to directly compare it to ability gating.
Yeah, I mean, does it qualify something as a Metroidvania if it has knowledge getting, which is the big question for Rain World and Tokitori.
Yeah. Like there are people who say that those games do feel like Metroidvanias to them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like Mark Brown has a whole video about how Tokitori is a Metroidvania.
Yeah, it's complicated, and there aren't enough good examples of like a game, I think, to really for me to form any real opinion on it. Not that I do that.
Master
We keep
has
trying,
no
we-
opinions.
Yeah, if we keep trying, we might drag a definition out of him.
Master has opinions. Just ask about Ori.
God.
Is Ori a Metroidvania?
Where's the R Metroidvania podcast bingo? Is Ori on there? I can't remember.
I think it was. I think La Milana 2 is also, or La Milana is on there at least. Master still hasn't beaten the second one.
Thanks for pointing that out. Most forgot.
Glad to be of service.
I think La Milana is on there. You know, we actually haven't mentioned La Milana a lot in recent podcasts.
True.
Or Dark Souls, for that matter. That used to be like something we bring up every week.
I'm pretty sure we still brought up Dark Souls in pretty much every podcast.
Oh, we did bring up Dark Souls tonight. We brought up Souls-like tonight because we brought up Salt and Sanctuary. I don't know, guys. You just can't escape it. Just Dark Souls is part of the genre now. Even if it's not a Metroidvania, it's part of the genre.
Part of the definition of Metroidvania is not Dark Souls.
So what Mel said is pretty much exactly why I think it's difficult to include knowledge gating, because like when you think about things you can do in a game, it's either you can't do it or you don't know how to do it. Like there's not really any other options there.
Right. Yeah, it's... I don't know. It's kind of a shaky area, I think, because sometimes... I mean, is there a tangible difference between a game not tutorializing a mechanic that you start with and finding the ability at that location? Like, as far as the experience of the player is concerned.
Yeah, it's kind of like the player gains the ability, rather than the character.
The closest examples you probably can get is with, Super Metroid and wall jumping as being an ability that you learn at some specific point. But usually when people talk about knowledge gating, at least in my experience, they're trying to refer to like a puzzle game, like The Witness, where knowing puzzle mechanics is an ability to them. And that's where it gets harder to define.
Right. Yeah, is it a qualifier for being a Metroidvania?
We want to start talking about sequence breaking as sort of an extension of knowledge gating.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'd put that knowledge gating at the end of that section so it kind of transitions into sequence breaking. Yeah, so one of the major things is whether a sequence break is intentional by the developers or like something that they didn't intend.
So I would argue that a sequence break is... So there is a tutorialized path through the game, a guided linearity or non-linearity path, you might say. And then there is an alternative to that. Any alternatives to that would be sequence breaking. Like, for instance, in Super Metroid, they try and guide you to the high jump boots, but you can bypass the high jump boots by using bomb jumping. Or really clever running, or whatever else you use to get into Brinstar or to Brinstar depths.
Yeah, I guess for me, I almost always try to get to areas that I'm not supposed to be in anyway, so like whenever something is like a sequence break, it doesn't really feel like a sequence break to me. It's just like that happened. I don't know how to...
I try to sequence break things, but a lot of times, like I'll do the sequence break and then I'll think, oh, I should probably go do things in order, and I'll go do them in order. So a lot of times with sequence breaking, you get you enemy boost up a ledge or something, and then there's just some other obstacle you can't get past.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it depends on how the game handles it. Some games are very rewarding when you sequence break things, and other games not so much.
Yeah, usually you just wind up running into higher level enemies than you would otherwise, and then get wrecked.
So Destroy Space Aliens has an intentional sequence break in it where you basically skip so you know how you have the level select at the beginning of that game? You can skip that entire level select if you know where to damage boost your way out of the thing. and they actually move the first ability upgrade that you would get normally to that sequence break, so that you can continue with the game from that point.
So is that just like a tutorial skip?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it that. I mean, you could argue that that's what it is.
When things are intentional sequence breaks like that, and then they like have to alter the game so that it supports the sequence break after you've done it, it kind of feels
Not like a sequence break.
yeah.
Feels more like an alternate.
So you're saying
path
it
than a
can't
sequence
feel
break.
a sequence break can't feel artificial, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Like it just feels like this is another path the developer wanted me to take.
Yeah. I think stuff like that is cool. I wouldn't discourage any developer from doing something like that. So let's see.
Apparently, Rabby Ribby, if you try to beat the game without any of the upgrades, it has to add platforms.
Oh, does
so
it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't actually know it cheated. I thought it was legit. That's too bad.
Yeah.
So Nick's Kills Myth says his Axiom Verge 2 sequence break blew the game open so much that he couldn't even realize the critical path anymore because of the abilities that he got early. Sequence breaks should emphasize the word break.
Okay, you should feel like you're completely violating the developer's intentions when you sequence break.
So in your opinion, the definition of sequence break must be against what the developer wants you to do.
It's
Yeah.
reasonable.
Well, so that's just the sequence breaks I like. Like, maybe you could still consider it a sequence break if the developer intended it. It just feels kind of artificial.
So what if the developer didn't intend it, but they knew about it? Because I know that Koji Igarashi, so as Sarah just mentions the Symphony of the Night breaks, apparently Koji Igarashi was completely aware of the death skip break. And wanted to get it fixed, but there was time restraints or something. And also he mentioned that it was his fault that the death skip break is still in the game, and that he was embarrassed by it. I was watching him sit next to some speedrunners, and he was commenting on his thoughts of the speedrun as it was happening. I believe he said something along those lines. Verify what I say by looking at the speedrun that I'm talking about. I might even link it in the description. But I thought that was interesting. But what do you think of that? So if a developer didn't intend it but knew about it, is that still a sequence break?
I think so, yeah.
I'd say it's a sequence break.
Especially because he was mad about it.
Especially since it's bad about. Okay, so as long as we're making the developer mad, that makes it a sequence break. We're breaking their will.
Yeah, this is the entire goal.
No, I agree. One of the best things about a sequence break is it's something you kind of feel like you're not supposed to be doing. So, no, sequence breaks are great. Now, okay, does a Metroidvania need to include sequence breaks to be a Metroidvania?
So I have seen people say that. But
So are there any sequence breaks in Hollow Knight? Because I'm pretty sure they intended most of the sequences you can go through in that game.
Well, can certainly go through harder paths earlier. But, if the devs know about those, then are they sequence breaks?
Yeah, I know they were saying that they put in things so that you could like pogo off of background stuff and get to areas earlier. So those are intentional sequence breaks. Which, yeah, I guess I would still consider them sequence breaks. They're just not like the kind that I like.
So Nick's Killsmith says that there's a shade skip. I'm actually not familiar with that one. Belfast Belmont says... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think it has to do with firing your soul or something, but it's getting through those... I think it's getting through those shade barriers, which seems pretty unintended because that's a fairly hard gate.
Yeah. And Melphis Belmont says that a sequence break is not needed for it to be a Metroidvania.
I get why people would say that. And if you value sequence breaks, I mean, Metroidvanias are probably good genres for that.
I think
Yeah,
it's a good thing to measure quality by.
Yeah, I would say that a good Metroidvania should almost just like naturally wind up having sequence breaks. Like even if the developer didn't put them in on purpose.
You could you could say that sequence breaks are a symptom of guided nonlinearity.
So,
Are
like
you
in
trying to get us to go to the next section?
Just guided linearity. Actually, I actually wasn't. Didn't even look at the doc and read what was next. I'm so good at these segues. I'm just doing them without even knowing.
So sequence breaks are often a result of systems-based game design. So, for instance, like the bomb jump, was that ever intentional? I think it might be intentional, especially in like Zero Mission was definitely intentional.
And there are places where you have to use bomb jumps in Metroid games.
That's
But
true.
not-
You have to
not-
jump at least
Not
once.
chaining them.
Yeah, the chaining thing, was that ever intentional, or was that just a result of just how the bomb physics work? So this game is a demo for a game that is, I think, pretty early beta, and it's another Pokemon Metroidvania, except that instead of like Monster Sanctuary where you have turn-based battles, it's all action-based.
The bird flapping looks a little strange. But is the control weird?
So I think one of the challenges this game is going to have is balancing every single, they call them fauna, the monsters, because there's so many that you can have, and balancing the physics for all of that is going to be a real pain for them, I think.
So in Monster Sanctuary, when you were like platforming around, were you controlling the monsters or the trainer?
You were controlling the trainer, and you could do things like ride the monsters or etc. In this game, you were absolutely controlling the monster the entire time. And the trainer just kind of teleports around with you, as you can see.
Yeah.
Can't even keep up.
I think I was like heading somewhere with like a specific goal. Is why I'm zipping around in the bird form. I'm calling it a form, but I guess it's technically controlling the bird monster. It's funny because there is an animation where the human will hold on to the bird, but it doesn't always like come up.
Yeah, I feel like the trainer is really disconnected from everything.
I like how the bird just kind of crawls across the ground.
This dizzy duck thing is just so OP. Anyway, we completely distracted ourselves with the game that's supposed to show that we're over time.
Wait, that's literally a Pokemon.
No, I named it that.
Oh,
Psyduck. Oh,
okay.
okay. Gyarados. Psyduck.
Yeah.
Trollcopter.
So they evolve when they hit certain level. Oh, this thing's hilarious. It just cracks me up. Oh, there's no reason to use the tongue ability when you have a bird.
Yeah. Like
Unless
as soon as you
funsies.
get flight, then pretty much all other platforming abilities become irrelevant.
You do have a
Games
limit
should
to
not
how
have
high you
flight.
can go, but yeah. Headhunter from Arya. So is there anything we want to wrap up with before we, since this is the game that I put on here as the aftertime game?
Not really.
So Melphis Belmont says, what about swimming? Is swimming an ability gate? I mean, it can be. Is that key gating?
It's closer to the key side of the spectrum because you can only swim when you're in water.
I'd agree. Most games have limited use of water. Either it's like the entrance to a water biome, or it's like Hollow Knight where you have a few specific areas you need to go into water to get through.
You know, come to think of it, water is rarely ever used as like a major part of a Metroidvania. Usually water is treated as an obstacle, and you get the ability so you can actually move through it. It doesn't like create a gameplay around the water.
But you do have games that are just completely underwater. like a area.
So Nick's kills myths you may have missed earlier on, but I think that Cauldrath would agree with you that Morph Ball is, in a way, key gating because it is only usable in gaps.
Well, you can use it anywhere. It's just generally only useful in gaps. Like, technically you could use it to try to get, like, underneath attacks or something like that. It isn't really used that way in the game.
There are a few bosses where it's useful to get your smaller hitbox to avoid its attacks.
Yeah.
Because Samus is usually a very bulky character that makes it very difficult for her to dodge unless you do the spin jump in the air or turn into a ball.
Mel is right.
Or
Swimming is just wet flying.
Yep. So you could have a game where there's more water than non-water areas, and then the flight winds up being the key,
Yeah.
or the swimming is.
You could have a game where you start underwater, and then at some point you get an ability that lets you
That would be interesting.
swim, and that's the equivalent of flying for the game.
It'd be like Aquaria, except that you would leave the water at some point. And I died.
What? I said wet? That's right, I didn't even say moist. Come on.
Well, anyway, I think that is our time for tonight. We're going to end this on Etzero calling Master gross and putting shame on him.
As is usual.
Anyway, we may continue this next time, or we may go to the thing where I would complain about a boss. I think, let's see. As far as streams that I will be missing this week, the 15th, I will be unable to stream because I will be traveling. But other than that, this month should be good in general. Any final thoughts, Cauldrath?
Nope.
Nope. Any final thoughts, Master?
You already know my answer.
I actually don't. Is this about Sarah? Oh, you mean your answer is no? I get you.
He has no thoughts.
Oh, that's right. That's okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.